I really feel like it's our responsibility as coaches to give hope to the families. When you have a child of determination, it's really easy as a parent to get laser focused on what they cannot do. So by coming through our sports academy, we're kind of trying to remove that veil and get them to see exactly what their children can do. We're not a therapy group, we're a sports coaching group. We're here to teach them sports. And we're going to do the best that we can in that area for your child.
It must be an incredible challenge to put together programs that cater for such a broad spectrum.
The best way I've kind of viewed this is, if you think about the Avengers, they've all got their different strengths. It's our job and our responsibility just to focus on their strengths and then to put things in place where they're going to be challenged and they enjoy doing. Someone could be like just sitting there and observing and taking it all in and actually staying in the environment. For others, it could be that they've ran a kilometre today and they've managed to row 800 metres. Like, all of them are so different. We never really zone in on what they're being diagnosed with.
Right.
We zone in what they can do. Like, I know some children who were born and weren't able to walk and now they're running and cycling. It's like with any of us, you just focus on that negative. It's never going to propel you forward to do something positive. So by focusing on what they can do, what any of us can do, you can then be successful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Innerfight podcast. Today, we're talking all about Heroes of Hope. This is an absolutely phenomenal sports academy born here in Dubai, in the Middle East, which is really changing lives. And I think more than that, changing a lot of perspectives and promoting a lot of inclusion through sport. It's absolutely awesome. My guest is Hollie Murphy. She's the founder of Heroes of Hope, and she's, as you'll see, she's so dedicated to just giving, as she calls them, the heroes, the people, the children in this program, opportunities. They are people of determination, but she's given them incredible and really life-changing opportunities through sports. We chat all about how she founded Heroes of Hope, how it really all kicked off. She talks to us through all these amazing athletes of determination, different challenges that they face on a number of different levels. And we really dig into this unique approach that what she's doing is she's just focusing on what people, their abilities rather than their disabilities, which sounds so simple, but to constantly show up as she's done over the years and do that in an area that is sometimes quite tough. There's quite a lot of red tape, or there's not a lot of inclusion, as many of you may know, just shows so much resilience, not only from Hollie, but also from all of the people that are involved in supporting the organization, families that are in the program, the youth that are part of the program as well, their resilience and their determination and their out and out ability to do a number of things. Of course, there's things that they're unable to do, and she's very open about that, but they're able to do a number of different things. She shares with us inspiring stories of how these kids overcome challenges and some of the milestones they've reached, and also some of the milestones that she's been able to reach, all through the use of sport. It's absolutely beautiful, and she speaks and presents it in such a passionate way. So sit back and get ready for this one. It is a really awesome conversation, and I don't have to talk much, so you don't have to hear from me. You hear a lot from Hollie. This is episode number 944 of the Innerfight podcast. No matter where you are in the world, thanks a lot for listening. Let's jump into today's show. Heroes for Hope.
Heroes of Hope.
Of Hope. What is, forget the heroes part, and this is the first hard question. I told you I'd try and ask some hard questions.
Yeah, go for it.
What is hope?
The real story behind it was I actually had to shut down the initial operations of the organisation and then come up with a whole new concept. Because at that point I'd left my career as a teacher, and I decided that we were going to go and make this into something really special. So the heroes, as you know, that's the athletes and the families. And then hope. Hope was kind of a broad term that was meant to instill a lot of hope for particularly parents who have children of determination. Because at that point when I met them, there wasn't very much on offer for people of determination in this region. And they were literally looking for something. And that's where they found me and they found the organisation. So that's where the hope comes from.
Amazing.
So I really feel like it's our responsibility as coaches to give hope to the families. As you know, like with neurotypical children, they get the opportunity to go play football, go play basketball. And as parents, you get to bring them to those activities and you get to, give them new skills and they learn new things and they get to be part of a really big community. But when you have a child of determination, it's really easy as a parent to get really laser focused perhaps on what they cannot do. So by coming through our sports academy, we're kind of trying to remove that veil and get them to see exactly what their children can do and to give them hope for their future and hope for what they can do and what they're capable of doing. So that's kind of where the hope came from. But then I think that expanded into a lot of the voluntary coaches that we have. So I think for some of the voluntary coaches, they didn't really know what to expect by coming to what we do. And then they got kind of involved, and now we've had a lot of them obviously stick by us for the last couple of years, not just for a couple of weeks, like for years, because it brings so much to them. It's a very rewarding, obviously, experience, but more so it teaches you so much more about giving back and kind of service beyond self. So I think the hope is not just for the families, it's also for the volunteers and also our junior coaches. So we have a lot of junior coaches who do volunteer, but the junior coaches are high school students, and they're kind of the next generation. So the hope again is about the junior coaches kind of learning from their experiences from here is a hope, becoming a lot more empathetic, open-minded and accepting individuals for exactly who they are and not trying to push them into a box or into society's kind of norms. We're trying to create a future that is a lot more open-minded and I always say like a bit more colourful. It's not just black and white. So by bringing in the junior coaches, I like to kind of think that we're hopeful for the future that's ahead of us. And that if they do come across perhaps people with autism or Down syndrome, they're not going to push them away. In fact, they're going to embrace them for exactly who they are. And perhaps if they are a business owner or somebody who's doing well in life, they might want to give that person an opportunity and look beyond kind of their individual difficulties. So cool. The hope thing is very, very broad for me. It's for absolutely everybody who kind of decides to get involved with what we do. So here is a hope it's bigger than what you see sometimes.
See, I thought that would be a hard question, but it's actually really easy and you've got an amazing answer. Because when I was thinking about it, it's such a great name, Heroes of Hope. And hope is, I started to think a lot about, well, what is hope? And we use it quite often like, I just hope it's going to get better, or I hope for this. But like, how you've contextualized that within what you do, really, it's a beautiful word.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And like, we're hopeful for the athletes as well. Like when we first began this, like many years ago, like, the kids were only learning, but now they're actually full grown adults and they're what we consider elite athletes and, in their categories, and they're going out there and they're competing at high rocks. They're doing like adaptive CrossFit events. They're doing like adventure races. So, for us, we actually, when we were doing this, we were hopeful for them and their future and to give them as many opportunities as possible, in sport and through sport. And we've managed to achieve that, thank God. And, really see them come out of their shells and become like fantastic athletes. And we're really proud of that.
We'll come to some of the great stuff you've done and that timeline in a little bit, because that was one of the things I had, like, because you've been doing it for so long, there's a big timeline. But I want to go back on the timeline. When did you first start working? You obviously were a teacher, but do you remember your first encounter with a human that was, I would say, just different from you? Absolutely.
I was 16, and at that point in my life, I was very, very involved with basketball. Yeah. I was playing international basketball, I was playing for the Irish team, and playing regional basketball with Dublin and stuff. And then I was playing quite high level women's basketball. Even though I was 16, I was kind of very involved. That was my whole world.
Wow.
Yeah, so basketball was my whole childhood. Basketball and athletics, they are my two big sports growing up. And at that time, the Special Olympics was being hosted in Ireland, and Basketball Ireland at the time needed volunteers to be part of the Special Olympics. And I was like, I wasn't quite sure what it was. I just knew it was at the basketball arena in Dublin. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Like, no problem, I'll jump in. And we got involved. And that's when I saw like Down syndrome athletes playing basketball. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize this even happened, because obviously our generation, if there's a person of, with special needs, they weren't necessarily put in school with you. It was very much so, it was very isolated and you never really cross paths. And I think that was my first time ever that I actually got to see them participate. And funny enough as well, at the time, I was also playing handball. And again, the handball club were also asked to get involved with Special Olympics at the time. They needed referees to officiate the handball games for Special Olympics. So I went down, but I didn't actually referee. I was too young, but I was doing the scorekeeping and so on. So that was kind of my first kind of introduction to this, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, because I obviously had no idea, and that was the first time I think I'd even been around somebody with special needs, to be honest, and I kind of firsthand kind of got that experience, and I think obviously subconsciously that kind of sat with me then for quite a long time. And then obviously when I moved into university studies, I was doing sports science and geography at the time, and then I went into do PE teaching. But during my studies even, I kept gravitating towards vulnerable like athletes or vulnerable students, and that's kind of was the area that I was really, for some reason, had such a grow and had a big interest in. So a lot of my pedagogy was around adaptive sports and working with people who may have additional needs. So that's kind of how it all happened. But I think it was a very subconscious thing at that time.
Do you ever look back and sort of reflect and like, yeah, there was a unique time there. It was the Special Olympics in Ireland, and you wanted to volunteer. But do you ever sort of wonder what drew you into those, like what made you want to stay within?
I think,
is there a feeling?
It's a feeling.
Yeah. It's
a feeling like no other, to be honest. Like it's such a strong passion almost. Like that's all I can say. It's a very passion. It's a desire. Yeah. I couldn't imagine myself now at this point doing anything else. Even if I was offered to do anything else, I wouldn't want to. I just feel like there's no other feeling like better than being around the heroes. Like no matter how bad your day is, no matter what, how tough life can get, once you're with them, you do a training session with them, after that 45 minutes to an hour, just being around these guys, you just come away like just feeling so good and so happy. And that's the thing, I just love being with these guys like day in and day out. It is a feeling like no other. And it's a feeling that hasn't just inspired me in terms of the organisation, but also as an athlete as well. So a lot of the time when I'm competing, I do think about the heroes and I think about them and doing it for them. So it's kind of, in a really roundabout way, like selfishly, I kind of use them to become a better person. And, they are a lot of times like they're my drive behind a lot of what I do, not just professionally, but also individually as well.
It's interesting what you say, because that was quite prevalent when I was younger, and I think it's still, and we'll probably go into this as well, it's probably too prevalent now. We never really saw people of determination, or I think back then they were called handicapped people, and obviously the name has changed, but people that were different to ourselves, they were kind of kept away.
Definitely.
So it's kind of, I always think it's like almost split. I understand people that feel a bit odd around people of determination. Absolutely. Because we've not been...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that's why it's interesting that you get this feeling and this drawing towards them, whereas it's quite, I wouldn't say it's okay, but it's understandable that some people are a bit like, oh, and they're taken aback by it.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like, I actually 100% get that as well. Yeah. It's unknown territory. People still to this day, I still have people asking, what is autism? They don't know. And I'm like, that's interesting. Because obviously for me, I'm in it all day, every day. So sometimes I'm taken back when people do ask. I'm like, actually, that's not their fault.
Yeah.
That is just how the world works at the moment. And it's okay. It's my job to tell them exactly what that is. So now they're more aware. And then when I reflect on that, I'm like, well, at the end of the day, that's the purpose of Heroes of Hope, is to create this awareness and educate and, to open up those doors, bridge that gap between, neurotypical and special needs, and becomes not, like I said, like this weird or wonderful thing. It's something that we understand now, and we can accept it. And as society, we know how to work with this. But for such a long time, unfortunately, we were, especially my generation, the generation before me, and even the generation before that, no idea whatsoever. So it became such a taboo to be around this world.
It was taboo.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a few different things there. You've mentioned Down syndrome, you've mentioned autism. Give us a rundown of the type of, like, what, I know that's probably a whole show in itself, but what are the most common, let's put it that way then, what are the most common conditions that show up is there? Or am I being really ignorant?
No, you're not. I think, it's a really tough one. I think when it comes to working, like we said in this region, we call it people of determination or people with special needs. from my experience, and this obviously can be very different from other people's, but especially with the athletes that we're working with, honestly, we're dealing with such a big spectrum, and that's the truth. Even though they might have a diagnosis of autism, they don't necessarily always have the same kind of characterisms as other autistic athletes and so on. So things can be very, very different. Even though they might have a specific diagnosis, it's different. No one's the same. We have a lot of global learning difficulties. We do have Down syndrome, like we already mentioned. We've got Fragile X syndrome. We've got some cerebral palsy athletes as well. So those are with physical disabilities. And again, there's something else to like understand is just because they have cerebral palsy doesn't necessarily mean they got a cognitive disability. So you open up, it is like a bit like Pandora's box. There's so much going on. And even at that, we get some parents who contact me and they're really concerned for their child because they may have ADHD. And I come meet their child who might perhaps have ADHD. I'm like, they don't fit into Heroes of Hope. Like, they're absolutely fine. You just need to kind of steer them in the right direction in terms of navigating through, like, I suppose a more neurotypical world. But like, they're absolutely fine. Because sometimes when the label is placed in the families, that's also quite a challenge for the families. They don't necessarily understand where does my child actually fit them. They're not necessarily here and they're not necessarily here. So it's also hard for them to try and find their child's place in the world. So yeah, I think it's really important to kind of dive deep with that, understand it fully, and then like my job role in particular is try and make sure the athletes that we have and we're taking care of, despite their disabilities, that we are catering for their individual needs, but also we are trying to create an environment where we see them as athletes and we can grow them as an athlete. So we do have like a ferocious amount, like I said, it's Pandora's box of all, even though they have autism, like I said, it doesn't look the same, but a lot of them are diagnosed with that. And
so how do you go, like, now it gets complex because you've got so many different, we're all different.
Oh, absolutely.
We're all different as, let's say, stereotypical normal human beings. And all of these great people of determination, special needs, however we call them, they're also all different. So how do you run programs that, like, it's in a CrossFit class, we've got 10 people and they're all a bit different and they're all a bit physically at different places. But they're kind of all like, I would say they can all hear us, but some of them just choose not to, if you know what I'm saying. Obviously people move different, but it must be an incredible challenge to put together like programs that cater for such a broad spectrum.
It's really challenging. And also we have to take into consideration sometimes the behaviour challenges as well. Like, sometimes you kids that might have a bad day, and that can obviously, you have to on the spot change it. Like, even though you might have had something planned, you're like, this isn't working, we're going to have to completely change this. So it's just having that really adaptive mindset. But I think the best way I've kind of viewed this is, if you think about the Avengers, they've all got their different strengths. It's our job and our responsibility just to focus on their strengths and then to put things in place where they're going to be challenged and they enjoy doing. So that's kind of how we do it, like then and there. So you can have a plan and you can have kind of a general idea of what they're working on that day. It's just been really quick on your feet, kind of learning how to adapt it and to making sure that they're all included and engaged. But you know what, we're really proud of what we achieved so far. I think a lot of the athletes have improved so much that now it is actually getting a little bit easier because a lot of the behaviour patterns have stopped. So kids that wouldn't necessarily would come in and kind of used to run around and not get involved are now suddenly getting involved, and they're listening and they're taking on the instructions. So again, it allows us to level up and to be able to continue to push them and progress them to a new level. So it is all about adaptability and just reminding yourself not everyone is the same. We've all got our own individual ways of learning, but as a coach or as a volunteer, like, it's our job to make sure that we put something in place where they actually get something out of the session. So that's the most important thing. For some, it can be different. For some, it could be like just sitting there and observing and taking it all in and actually staying in the environment. For others, it could be that they've ran a kilometre today and they've managed to row 800 metres. Like, all of them are so different, but it's just up to us within that time that we have with them that we put something in place that no matter what their ability is, they get something out of the session. Being really quick on your feet is really powerful.
I think you could teach a lot of coaches that coach general population a lot of tips and tricks and techniques to adapt. Quick adaptations. Really quick. And the same even with events. We do a lot of events, a lot of sporting events now for people of determination, but we have got multiple abilities coming into the events, which is awesome. But as organising these events, again, we got to make sure that we're programming according to the different abilities that are coming in. And again, on your feet at those events, you might have to quickly change something to make sure that
that athlete is getting something out of it and they can stay actively involved in the competition. So it's unknown territory, but we're so far so good.
I remember when I was a bit younger listening to, I think it was actually my first audiobook, and the guy's passed away now, which is not relevant really, but his name was Zig Ziglar, and he's quite a famous sort of motivation guy. And he was telling a story about a child who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and was then put in an environment of other children who had cerebral palsy, and long story short, it turns out that the kid actually never had cerebral palsy, but developed a lot of the habits of those other kids from mirror and matching. My question here is, and you alluded to it a little bit there, that a parent will bring a child and actually you don't see the child presenting, from your knowledge, with a lot of the problems. Some of the conditions that you see in children or in youth, for sure, they're born like that. We know why it's come, and some of them are maybe a little bit more complex. My question here is more around environment when kids are born, and whether the positive or negative impacts of the environment and the way that they're treated in the early stages of their condition, how that could potentially impact stuff. Because for sure there's still, even we're in 2024, I'm sure there's some misdiagnosis at a certain point, and then you see a child who's or a parent would say, I've got X, and you're like, I can't really see that, but maybe there's some behavior. And do you get what I'm saying?
I think so. I think that's what I'm saying. I think for us, we never really zone in on what they're being diagnosed with.
Right.
We zone in what they can do. So we look at what they're capable of doing, and then from that, we will then recommend what activities we feel like they should be part of, or what environment they should be part of. And I think that's really, really important.
Super, yeah.
Yeah, rather than looking at like a diagnosis and the pieces of paper and all of that. I know that's important for certain things in life. It could be like triggering things like the environment, maybe going to a shopping mall might overstimulate them. So let's avoid that environment. However, perhaps they love being outside and running around outside. If they love that, then go there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of identifying what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Diagnosis can help with that. But like I said before, they're not always the same. Yeah, the diagnosis for one child, they might have the same diagnosis, but they might have completely different, wouldn't say symptoms kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just a matter of, just for me personally, the environments are definitely really, really important. How you treat them, how you manage them. Obviously, early diagnosis is the best diagnosis, because straight away you can start putting fundamental things in place.
Yeah.
That's only going to aid them as they go through life.
Yeah.
And I've even seen that. I've seen some children who are born with autism who cannot talk for the first couple of years of their lives, and now they won't stop talking. So it all depends on, again, that early diagnosis and creating that environment where they're going to flourish. Yeah. And that's just the most important thing, is putting them in a place where they're happy, that they're engaged, that they are responding, and they want to be there. There's no, this, like with any child, you don't want to force them into something they hate being part of. You're not going to get the best out of them. So it's just kind of, those environments are definitely really, really important, and ensuring that they are learning and that they're growing and they are going to become the very best person that they can be despite having a diagnosis. That's kind of how I would see it. And like I said, through our work, it's all about looking at them and what they can do. We don't try and focus too far beyond that.
Yeah, it's the same, isn't it? Someone comes to a class or for a personal training session with a MRI or a report from a doctor that they've got a torn hamstring.
You work around it.
That's all we do.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's cool. We'll read it. Like you said, you can read the papers, and then it's like, okay, let's focus on what you can do today 100%. And make you a little bit better.
Yeah. And that's all. That's what it's about, and making sure that they're getting, that we're preparing them for events. And then when they get to I love doing that. That's my favorite part of the job. It's like we're preparing them for the event. We bring them to the event and they're really successful, and the parents are seeing what their kid can really do on this major platform. And you're like, they can do this, and you too need to see that and what they can do. And some of the families have been outstanding, and they just really do focus in on what their child can do.
Yeah.
Like I know some children who were born and weren't able to walk, and now they're running and cycling. Wow. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, it is.
So nice.
It's like with any of us, you just focus on that negative. It's never going to propel you forward to do something positive. So by focusing on what they can do, what any of us can do, you can then be successful.
It must be very hard, though. Let's talk about the parents, because they have a huge role. You've got
Massive.
everything from, oh my God, I made this child in this, I created this mess in a way. Like, I've heard that from people with children. I'm so responsible. I created the situation that we're in, and it should have been another, and so they wear a lot of guilt. And someone that's wearing a lot of guilt a lot of the time, how does that subconsciously project itself onto the child? You must see, or I'll ask you a direct question here. How much time do you spend managing parents as opposed to the children?
A lot.
Yeah, that's a hell of a skill.
Yeah, like politely, a lot. Again, I think initially it was very frustrating, I'll be honest with you, because my job, obviously, as coaches, and you obviously as coaches, you know what that athlete can do, and you're trying to manage perhaps other people who don't even have a sporting background to try and see the same thing that you see.
Yeah.
So it's gotten to a point though now where I've taken some time to understand their circumstances and what they've been through, to understand perhaps how that parent is feeling and why they feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And then from that, we've built like a very trusting relationship. And I think that's really important, is the relationship that I personally have formed with a lot of the families. It's just because for a lot of them, as you said before, their children obviously do have difficult behaviors, and then they have to pass their child over and give it to somebody who doesn't really know their child and hasn't really managed these behaviors before, and actually have trust in the child and the adult to work together. And that for a lot of parents is a very challenging situation. So you do have a lot of parents trying to be on top of you. You're like, sorry, do you mind?
Yeah.
I'm trying to coach here, and then, but over time that relationship does start to grow, and then eventually the parents do detach themselves. But yeah, a lot of our parents, I always say this about our families, and I always say this 100%, these parents are the strongest people I know. Like they really, really, truly are. Their parenting style is completely different from anyone else, and the sacrifices, their commitment, their love and loyalty to that child, you cannot compare. And I don't think I've ever come across a community of people who are kind of this devoted, to their children. Because a lot of them understand that, they have this child for the rest of their lives. It's not like, for a lot of us, you get to 18, you go off to university, you get jobs, you live a very independent lifestyle. For a lot of these families, this is, cradle, to the grave really situation. And, for a lot of them, they do worry about what will happen to their child when they're not here. And that's a really sad thought. And it does gut me at times when I have those conversations with them. And it's a real worry, and it's really, really hard for these families. But like I said, despite all of that, they are the strongest, some of the most positive people I've ever met. And, I'm very proud. I always say to them, I always thank them for allowing me to work with their children. I think, it's a privilege to be part of this community. It's a privilege as an outsider to be able to come in and to, do a service. But a lot of that is inspired by the parents, to be honest. And as much as I can, I want to give to these parents as much as I can to them. I really want them to feel proud of their efforts and proud of their children. And I think, like I said before, these parents they're amazing people, and like all the credit goes to them, because they're the ones who are making sure their kids are getting to all the sessions, getting to all the events. These are the parents who are definitely putting another commitment. And it's from a lot of our kids are tied into therapy sessions. They're tied into physical therapy, OT, speech therapy, this, that, and the other thing. But yet the parents have still carved out time to make sure they're coming to their sports as well. So I do appreciate that a lot.
That's a nice little segue, isn't it? Because we're seeing an increasing amount of services offered, which I would call more on the medical side.
100%, yeah.
Hospitals having therapists, and your child needs this, and your child needs that, and your child needs the other. And I think when you're a parent, when you're a human and a doctor says you need to have your back operated on, you go, this guy knows more than me. So when you're a parent and you're going through everything you've said, but I've seen such better results for human beings
through sport,
just doing sport.
Yeah, it's a heavy request, I think, for these families. Even financially, it's very heavy as well. So when we start off here as a Hope, a big part of what we were trying to achieve is like, I really want to give the families respite. I was trying to give them something normal. that's not therapy focused, that isn't going to be not a disappointment, but another, right, what else do we have to do to them? What now? You know, I wanted to give them something that's just normal. You know, just come to sports, enjoy, meet a new community, just have fun, run around, learn a skill, make friends. You know, that's what I wanted to create, just something that was peaceful and positive for these families. And that's kind of what we have essentially done with Heroes of Hope. Because, and that's one thing I have to say all the time to families, I'm like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm a sports coach. They're going to learn sports. You know, so I'm like, and I always say to them, like, we're not a therapy group, we're a sports coaching group. We're here to teach them sports, and we're going to do the best that we can in that area for your child. You know, all the other stuff. You must have
seen so many kids. I mean, I've seen it with some of the, again, I feel bad, but some of the normal children in our kids program and teens program that Bonnie coaches, and even stuff that Jamie used to do a lot with sort of young rugby players. They're in, either before or when they're with us, they're going through various therapy sessions. And you can see the parents, you alluded to a couple a minute ago, you know, it's like, just leave us, just leave the child with me. We're going to do a good job here.
Yeah.
Just, you know, but they're naturally, because they're seeing their child in various forms of therapy, but when they're here for a year or a couple of years, everything starts to fix itself through sport.
100%.
They stop the therapy session, and even things like, you know, obviously ADHD is a huge one and increasing. I think we
all have that one, to be honest, like, to a degree. Yeah.
Like, you know, yeah. I've had ADHD for 46 years, but I've never been to see a doctor about it.
Same, like off the wall, off the charts. We don't need to go and get a diagnosis. We just know. It is what it is, yeah.
But that must be, again, a huge amount of your motivation, seeing the impact of sport.
Of course.
Almost, can we say it, trumping modern medicine?
1,000%. But I think even for me, like personally, no matter what challenges or struggles I've gone through in life, I've leaned into sport to get me out of that situation. You know, I think it's life, we're always going to have our dark patches. That's 100% true. And as soon as I throw myself into my training or throw myself into sport and give myself a goal, a focus, a purpose, that will definitely take you out of that hole, or to inspire you just to keep going and to keep working. And I think it's the same for children. Like, you give them a goal, you give them purpose, you show that they can achieve it, and suddenly now you get a whole different child in front of you. You know, they understand how to move their body, they understand that this is a positive place for me, they understand their, you know, new feelings, you know. So sport 100%, no matter what is going on, personally for me as well, it's a safe space. It's a place that you can go to, and, you know, it'll always cure you. Always. Even when I'm injured, I will still go do sport, because I'm like, it's fine, the blood is pumping to the injury, you know, you work around it. So
it's environment as well, isn't it?
It is. It's just having people giving you that high five. It takes your head away from the problem. It takes your head out of that situation. It, you know, you put your headspace into something else, and suddenly then after an hour of training, you always feel a lot better. So it's the same for our kids who've got, like, perhaps we do have some kids who display aggressive behaviors at home, or who can get frustrated and angry, but they're non-verbal, so they can't tell you how they are feeling. So I always say, please bring them to what Heroes of Hope, because if they're running around a running track, we do track and field with them, obviously. If they go running, after 45 minutes of running, they're a happier human, and they're going home now calmer, more content. The same way you and me can get. If I'm angry or I've had a bad day, I'm like, oh my God, you go for a run, you come back, you can manage yourself better. You've got clearer head space. You're like, all right, it's not so bad, I'll do this, you know. So again, by giving these children the opportunity, rather than smashing up the house, bring them down to the sports club, allow them to vent there. You know, they can run, we do boxing, they can bang a bag, you know, they can throw things, like, but at least they're doing it in a safe space, and they're doing it in a space where it's controlled, and they're doing it for a good reason. Rather than, again, doing it at home and perhaps even hurting their siblings or hurting their moms or dads. Like, they can actually do it in a space where it's celebrated and it's controlled, you know. So yeah, I 100% agree. And I've had a few of the parents come to me and say they have reduced their therapy sessions because they're getting so much out of Heroes of Hope, because it's physical literacy. It's in its own way, it does, like, work on some of the OT skills. We work on even speech and language, because you have to listen to the instructions. You know, we obviously have to talk to them and get response sometimes out of them. So it's a very mixed bag, but that's sport for you. A lot of people you don't understand there's a lot of power within sport, you know, and you can excel as a human being just through a sports world and sports environments.
You were teaching sport. You moved over here as a sports teacher. And you jumped out into a world,
literally off the cliff,
that we've already used the word taboo in this region, and we could go deep or we could stay shallow. But again, there's been challenges of people of determination and the way that they're accepted or treated within society. What I'm saying, you went into an area that was insanely hard.
Yes.
And you're still here.
Yes.
We're telling a story.
Yeah.
Like, talk us through a little bit of that and how you've maybe overcome, you know, because to register as a charity, and it's hard, you know, and I know it's become increasingly easy. So, you know, and it's become more accepted. But when you sort of set up and quit your job and went all in, like, it's still like people just going, what?
Yeah. It was a moment of madness. No. Do you know what? I think, I don't know, through sport, through life, I think I've learned from a very young age that life is very short. And I think you have to follow what makes you really happy and what inspires you, makes you a better person. And I'm a big believer, again, back to the environment. You surround yourself in an environment where you can either excel or you don't. And teaching wasn't serving me at all. I wasn't the best version of myself. And especially during COVID, I realized when we went into lockdown, I really missed the heroes. I didn't miss my job. I missed being around people of determination. I did everything I can during COVID to try and put on like sessions and stuff for the heroes via Zoom and so on. I love working with children. I love working with kids, and that has always been a passion of mine. And that was always the part of my job that kept me in the job, was working with students and watch them excel through sport. Loved it. But at the end of the day, I've always believed in this, service beyond self. I'm a big believer in giving back. I love being part of voluntary groups or community groups where you are changing people's lives. And I think, you know, that is really, really fulfilling to be part of something like that. So I reached a point, I think I learned a lot in life, do something that makes you happy. Money will come and go, right? That, you know, I know money for a lot of people is a driving force, but for me personally, money will come and go. And that's why I kind of thought myself, I'm like, right, you're going to take this leap and you're not going to have money for a while, and you may not have this for a while, and you're going to literally go into, I'm not a business person, not by a long shot, you know. So I jumped off the cliff and I went for it, and it was terrifying and it was very stressful. The first kind of 2 years were exceptionally hard. I didn't know where money was going to come in or out. I didn't, you know, sometimes I didn't know when I was going to eat. That's the truth. Like that's how like tricky it was at one point. But I never gave up on the ambition. I never gave up on the drive that I had. Like, I was really inspired by the community and I wanted to do everything I could for them. And I never gave up, but I think that's kind of where the grit kind of came in. I just kept going, kept building the programs, got more and more kids, you know, we started doing more events, you know, and gradually just started to grow and grow and grow. And when you're really deep in it, you never get a chance to look back at the success. You just kind of, we're going. I kept kind of powering forward. And recently we did the sports awards there just before the end of the year. In July, we did the end of year sports awards, and that was 4 years of the organisation. And during those sports awards, it went on for 3 hours, and I was like, oh my God, but there was so much to celebrate, and there's been so much achievements. Like, back then, when I first started this, did I ever kind of truly believe I'd be standing in the Palm in a beautiful hotel with over 100 athletes in front of me and their families, and celebrating a ferocious amount of sporting success? Probably not, no. But in that moment, I actually had a bit of cried and everything, because one of my athletes was leaving, and I've had him since he was a child, and now he's a big boy, and they're moving to America, and I was like, oh. But in those moments, you suddenly realise like what we have achieved, and it was worth it. And I'm a big believer, if you have a calling, which I do think we all have our own calling, I think if you have a calling and you have something that's going to get you up every single morning, it makes you feel good, it puts a smile on your face, you go for it and you don't look back. Because so many of us get really stuck on, I must do this 9-to-5 job, but I'm miserable, I'm not happy, I feel depressed, I don't want to wake up today. A lot of us can get stuck in that rut and believe that's what life is about. No, it's not. You find what you are on this earth to do, and your life changes massively. And so many people have said to me, like, you're a different person. I'm like, I know I am. And I am a different person because I built a life that I'm proud of, and I built a life that makes me super happy. Yes, it's not a life in abundance in terms of wealth, but it's a life in abundance of wealth, but in a completely different way. You know, it's like, I get to work with the best children. I'm around the kindest people I can think about, like all those volunteers who give up their time, the facility managers and people who manage the facilities and allow us to have time in their business essentially. Yeah. But, without these people, we can't survive. We can't do what we do. But I love being around such an empathetic, generous, inspiring group of people. So, yeah, the leap of faith, I took it, and thankfully it has paid off. For how long, I don't know. But I'm just going to keep trucking along on this journey and keep trying to do more and build more. And every year you get new inspirations because you're around such an inspiring group of people, not just, like I said, the heroes, but externally as well. I've got to meet some fantastic people in Dubai and what they're all about and what they're trying to achieve. And then, working alongside them has been wonderful. And I'm learning a lot with that as well. So, yeah, it's all not paid off, but it's getting there. But like I said, I think it's important that life is too short. Find what you love to do and just do it and forget about the rest, really.
You must have seen quite a change, or hopefully quite a change in almost the perspective and the attitude towards what you're doing in the years that you've been
100%
doing it, just in the last sort of 4 years, really, like you say. Where do you think, where does it get to? Like, we're more accepting because we know more, because because of people like you, we're able to host, even here at the gym, people are able to see what you do on a Sunday, and it's nice, and we try to create this awareness. But where does it go? Like, where do you see it tracking towards?
This is kind of my vision moving forward, I think, and perspective change. When I first started this off, definitely I was stuck in this kind of charitable model for people of determination. Because when I was growing up, people of determination were always this kind of charity thing, right? Over the last couple of years, that started to anger me a little bit, because now that I know the community inside and out, I know these children inside out, I'm like, they're not charity. They are athletes. At the end, these are athletes. So for me now, we're no longer kind of saying we're charitable. We're a not-for-profit sports academy. We are a sports academy that is serving people of determination through sport, in sport. And my ambition now is to make them the best athletes that they can possibly be, obviously within their categories of a POD. Because I'm going to relate it back to even women in sport. For such a long time, people never knew what people like women in sport could do. It's become such a big thing, particularly over the last, I think for women in sport, the last 2-3 years, it's really, we're really zoning in on, look at the CrossFit Games, look at what the women can do there. It's inspiring, their whole body shape, everything is different. You look at the Olympics this year, it's 50% participation, right? Yeah. For such a long time, women in sport was kind of, again, a taboo. Wasn't really celebrated, it wasn't really looked at, we didn't get to see it on our televisions, all of that is starting to change. But I think over the next kind of couple of years, as generations start to change their mindset, I think we're going to see, even though there's athletes like this kind of POD athlete will start to break through, and you're going to have athletes perhaps with autism competing at the Olympics or so on. I do think there is a space in sport for athletes of determination, because at the end of the day, they are athletes. They need their events, they need their categories that they can train for, that they can compete at. Like, we need to have an adaptive mindset. Once you implement that with a bit of structure, we could have some fantastic athletes, and they do exist, and I'm around them every single day. So for me now, I'm kind of trying to shift people's perspective of PODs. I think we can't do what we do, obviously, without sponsorship, support. And there's still to be around it. Like, I still struggle sometimes getting the sponsorship or talking to some sports brands, being like, are you interested maybe in supporting athletes, but they do have special needs, and not sure that's kind of what we want. And I get that,
which is cool,
which is fine. Totally get that. But I do think we're now heading into perhaps a generation where we need to start celebrating athletes of determination now, and start kind of including them as part of the sports world, because they do belong. They're exceptionally talented. But
it's that shift, isn't it? It's interesting. As soon as you said it there, it clicked for me. You started almost as a charity. this is not charity.
No.
That's where we're shit as humans as well, right? We didn't recognize, well, like you said, we didn't recognize females in sport. We didn't recognize people with determination in sport. And then when we started to recognize people of determination, it was almost like charity.
Yeah.
Why is it a charity? It's not a charity. You're not a charity.
No.
You need to eat.
Yes.
You know, and the same that someone, and this is where sort of, could say something that could backfire here, but this is where like equal footing for everything, like the families should pay your fees because you're an incredible coach at coaching people of determination.
Yeah.
So same as I can charge X amount for a personal training session or a CrossFit class, you can charge that because you have the skill set, you have the passion, you have the drive.
Yeah.
You can bring a child in that has maybe 14 years old and has never sat for more than 3 minutes in any kind of class setting, and you can have them downstairs for 40 minutes.
And get them going.
And you deserve that.
And like, that's what I'm trying to explain is like, anyone who backs this organization, I'm like, you're part of the impact. You're going to empower these athletes to progress, be better, do better. You're serving the parents, you know, in a way as well, like by supporting the work that we do. You're also supporting families. Yeah. You know, you're giving them that hope and you're giving a platform where we can keep growing these athletes and make them the very best that they can possibly be. And that's kind of the new ambition moving forward. It's no longer kind of, this is a charitable thing. No, please get on board and kind of support and empower and make impact and help us change, you know, how people see people of determination. That's why I'm like very passionate about putting the athletes on massive platforms. So they do compete like at High Rocks.
Yeah, I know.
You know, they're at the WOD on 3 at Dubai Sevens. They're in Yas Mall in 2 weeks' time, where we've put together like what's called the Games of Hope, where they're going to compete in like functional fitness events. But I'm doing that on purpose because I want people who are walking by to stop and actually take notice. I'm like, I don't want to be hidden in the corner, you know, and be in a dark spot and no one can see them. They deserve the same attention that you might get when you're off doing your events, or I'm getting when I'm off playing my rugby events. You know, they need to be seen. And once you can see what they can do, it's not only inspiring, but it's also like, it's life-changing. So people need to see it. And when you see it, it changes everything. It really does.
How, and I know you've kind of answered this already, but you constantly break through red tape. You constantly achieve things, like you said, no, we're not going to be just off to the side here.
No. We
want to be here. Like, you get told no more than a lot of people. How do you must have some tough times.
Always.
Really?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's moments of like, oh, let's go back to teaching. But like, of course, you're going to have your wobbly moments, of course. But then when that breakthrough moment happens and then you see those, like, honestly, you see those kids and their name in lights. And I've seen that happen. Their names have literally been in lights. And you're just like, it was worth that struggle. Because why? If I didn't have this struggle, I wouldn't appreciate this moment. If I didn't have this struggle, you know, I wouldn't have had that fight or drive to make this even bigger than what I should have been. So by sometimes being saying no, it does feel it more. I'm like, okay, we're going to like sidestep. We're going to make it happen this way instead. Really? And I think you need that struggle to appreciate the good times and, you know, to work really hard so that it is a yes. And when that yes comes, it's magic. You're like, let's go. Like it is. It's like it's like this adrenaline rush. You're like, right, we got this green light. Let's go, go, go. And when you're given that chance, you want to create something so special to celebrate the athletes, celebrate the parents, and the opportunity that's been given to you. So, yeah, at the beginning in particular, it was very, very, very hard. And luckily for us, thank God, we're getting more yeses these days than no. So, please God, now we can keep going the way that we're going and create, you know, some really fantastic athletes and events for them. So, yeah.
Oh, it's my final question, really, it must be very emotional.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Oh, do you know what? I don't. I've had this question before because like some of the volunteers in particular, they get very emotional in moments. You know, particularly when they see these kids achieve like things they never thought they were going to achieve. And I've definitely had those moments. I even had one there even recently when they're at the National Games for Special Olympics. It's the first time ever. a community group was invited to the national games. Usually that is for Emirati athletes who are part of the government centres, and we got our invite to go to national games and to compete. And the heroes were there in their little kit, and they're competing in weightlifting, basketball, badminton, you know, and it was just a really big moment because we are in the UAE. We're expats in the UAE, so we're visitors to the country essentially, and a lot of our community are expats as well. So this is not the norm. What we're doing is not norm. It's not really done in any other country that I can really think of. It's been done but at a very kind of smaller scale. It's not been done the scale that we're currently offering. So when we do get like those magic moments, like I said, particularly even the national games, for example, and you see those kids get out there and they're playing basketball and they're fighting hard in the court and they're crying because they lost their badminton game, or they're looking to do a 1 rep max when they're doing their powerlifting, and you take a step back and you're like, there's attributes of these athletes that I cannot teach. Their heart, their fight, their passion, it's there. And they're the moments where you're just like, don't cry. Yeah. But you have to sometimes just take a big deep breath and not lose it. But in your private time when you're driving your car, it might come out or whatever.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But like I said, those are the moments, they're so special. That level of emotion I've never experienced, and I've been competing in sport my entire life at some of the top level of sport as well. I've never had a feeling like it when I am with those heroes and watching them break through barriers and achieve some really remarkable things. And they're the emotions that will definitely keep me alive and keep me going, and to ensure that I can keep doing the best that I can possibly do for this community. Like I said, there is no there's nothing else coming out of this, particularly, like I said, monetary. There's nothing else other than it's a very genuine pursuit and passion for, I feel, a group of athletes that I really believe in, and I really hope the future becomes even brighter for them and they can do the very best in sport and be given the same opportunities that I got.
I hope you stop and give yourself a big pat on the back from time to time. I genuinely do. I think you deserve it.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think because they're incredible moments that you create, and it's incredible change. And the way you describe it there, it gives me goosebumps. Like it's incredible. Yeah. You should be very proud of what you do.
Yeah, I am. I am proud of what I do, and I think it's like I said before, I think I'm very lucky at what I do. I don't think everybody will ever live a life where they get to feel the emotional side and experience what I'm experiencing right now, because a lot of what we're doing has never been achieved. So we're kind of the pioneers of this as well. So we're kind of the first timers to feel this emotion or to see this happening. So yeah, it's a pretty remarkable place to be in. So I feel very lucky for it as well. I genuinely do. I don't take for granted what we've achieved or what we're currently trying to achieve. I think it's a very special place to find yourself in, and we're very lucky to be doing this for this community. So yeah, beautiful. I am grateful for it. I really, really am.
So you've inspired the hell out of everyone who's listening. How can the community as us or any listeners, what support do you need? How do people get involved? People want to help you because of what you said over the last 45 minutes. What can we do for you?
Like, as always, we love having people come and volunteer, get involved, meet the heroes. Like, even if it's 1 or 2 classes that you can commit to, why not give yourself 45 minutes a week, come in, get involved. Like, I always say it, like, we could spend 6 hours watching Netflix, you know what I mean? Like, so, put just 1 episode of Netflix, that's all we need from you. But that 1 episode of Netflix is literally, it can be life-changing for the heroes, having an extra person, extra pair of helping hands. So you can get involved with Heroes of Hope. You can either reach out through Instagram, or on our website, which is www.heroesofhopeuae.com. There's a way to just click and to register as a volunteer. Obviously, as an athlete, you can obviously reach out and get involved if you want to register as an athlete. And then sponsorship, always sponsorship. Like, we have so much we want to achieve. There's so much that we are striving to do for the community, and obviously financial support is a big way. As we know, we can't do this without that level of support. As we'd love to be able to do without that support, but we can't. That's just how the world works. And, but please note, like, if you come on as a sponsor, like, it's impact, it's an impact donation or an impact kind of way of, giving back. So if someone wants to empower and to help the community, we're always looking for that as well. So
fantastic. Yeah. Hollie, thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Inspiring. Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. Folks, go and check out what's going on. And if you want to see it in person and you don't want to go out of your way, come to Innerfight.
Yeah.
Sundays, the heroes are here. I'm always just blown away by
come
what
to
I
the chaos.
See. Like,
it's organised chaos, but it's chaos all the same.
It's good. It's great. And you see, I've seen it from the athletes that keep coming. They're different.
Yeah. They're changed. They're
they
completely changed.
Like, wow.
But know what as well, they're growing with us. So we're having them from they were like children and now they're young adults. And that's what I love.
It's so cool.
They've literally grown up with us. Yeah. They're my kids.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.